Jason LeDuc, everybody. Give him a round of applause.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Lorraine. Let's hear it for all of our other speakers tonight. All right, as she said, I am Jason LeDuc. I'm the founder of Jason LeDuc Leadership Consultants. I spent 20 years in the Air Force doing cool things that I still cannot talk about 10 years after I left the Air Force, leading teams all over the world doing those cool things. One of the great things about the military is everything is about leadership, to the point where we get so internalized on leadership, it's actually hard to talk about the skills we developed and teach those to other people. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is trying to boil down what we learn as leaders in the military, as followers in the military, because followership is important too, and bring that out to companies in corporate training and coaching environments. So, who here is a business owner or a startup founder? A lot of you guys. Who here is a leader of a team in some other capacity? A couple other people. Who here gets really tired sometimes of feeling like they have to do it all themselves and their team's not really giving their all for them? Almost everybody, great. So we're going to talk about some of those things tonight and some of those things you can do. All right, so you're going to get a little bit of a choose your own adventure tonight. So scan the QR code, please. Let me know which topic you would like to see us talk about. If we have time, we'll do more than one. So take a minute, scan that QR code, and we will talk about either getting out of the weeds and staying focused on the big picture, how we motivate others, or how we deal with conflict. We got a horse race here. No, I said it so you can't vote more than once. I thought ahead. I knew I was dealing with a startup tech crowd. Are we waiting for any more? Usually it tells you how many more folks are trying to get in there. Is everybody done? Raise your hand if you're still trying to vote. All right, I don't see any. All right. Looks like our winner is getting out of the weeds and staying focused on the strategic big picture and strategic thinking. My last assignment in the Air Force was as an instructor of strategy and leadership at Air War College and Air Command and Staff College. Who's ever been in the military? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you guys understand Staff College, War College. That means nothing to most of you guys in this room. What's important about that is every few years in the military, as officers, we go through, or even as enlisted folks, we go through what's called professional military education. Air War College is the very top level of that in the Air Force, and we take people and we take people who are really, really great at their jobs, and we put them through the very difficult transition of becoming strategic leaders, thinking strategically. It's very, very hard. If you ever feel like you're having trouble thinking strategically and staying focused on the big picture, you're not alone. The most talented lieutenant colonels and colonels in the Air Force who are selected to go off and be generals later on have a hard time getting out of their tactical mindset and thinking strategically. So, how do we think strategically? How do we get out of the weeds? How do we stay focused on the big picture? This is a picture of Hangar 104 at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. This is where I started my journey as a major, starting to learn to think strategically. What we were doing in Hangar 104 is we were basically a small tech startup inside the United States Air Force. People would call us and say, we have a problem, can you build something that solves that problem? And then we would say, yes we can, or no we can't. Most of the time we always said yes we could, and we would figure it out later, just like a tech startup. Now, we wouldn't have called ourselves that back then, but now I realize, having worked with the startup community, that's what we were doing. And we had uniformed folks, we had civilians, we had contractors, we had engineers like me, we had coders, software developers, hardware folks, logistics folks, transportation folks. We had a mini Air Force inside a squadron of 80 people in the Air Force. And this is where I had to start thinking about the strategic big picture. How are the things we were going to build, how are they going to be used? Not just by the operators who are going to use them, but by the generals who are deciding what things do we use and how do we use them to satisfy big missions. One of the things we worked on here was a technology that protected the Joint Task Force as they went to do capture kill missions for bad guys in Iraq and Afghanistan. So those are the kinds of things we were doing. Let's take a step back. To think strategically, we have to think about being leaders. That's the number one step in starting to think strategically. So, scan the QR code, tell me why we need leaders. Okay, to lead, to keep focus, direction. People need direction, to get out of the weeds. Lead and influence, I like that one. Make decisions, 50,000-foot view, strategic guidance. Take responsibility, provide a path. People need direction. Now we're getting some duplicates, that's great. Avoid chaos. 99% of us are sheep, we need a sheepdog. Inspire, I love that one. That's really important. Find purpose, we're going to talk about that. I love that. Anybody still trying to get in? Still trying to type something in? Inspire, motivation, all good stuff. Let's move on. Oh, that's why I can't see stuff. All right, so why do we need leaders? So what you see here is an AI-generated image I created of a village back in the Paleolithic area. And here's the thing about human beings. Back when we were living like this, we were not the strongest creatures out there. We were not the fastest. We didn't have the sharpest teeth, the sharpest claws. Basically, all we had were these really large brains. And those large brains enabled us to assess what was going on and to work together. So look at our picture, what do we have? We have a hunting party in the back. They're off hunting a mammoth. They're doing that to go get food. Now that started out as first human beings realized if we work together, we can protect ourselves against predators. Then they realized if we work together, we can take down these bigger animals so we always have food for the village. You also see in this picture, there's a couple of folks up front, the older folks and the younger folks who aren't well suited to be hunting. They're working on better tools. They're working on ways to be more lethal and to protect the men who are doing the hunting so that the village as a whole can survive. And then finally, in the corner of the picture, you see a couple folks. They're trading. They're trading with someone with another village. Human beings figured out that our survival works best when we are working together. Humanity's superpower is its social bonds. We build teams to achieve something bigger, a vision bigger than we can achieve on our own. Who in this room has a vision they're trying to achieve that they cannot do all by themselves? Just about everybody, right? That's why we build teams. We need leaders to lead those teams. We need leaders to have that vision. We need leaders to turn that vision into a strategy and then turn that strategy into actions and tasks that the rest of the team can take. Second question. We know why we need leaders. Why do people follow leaders? As leaders, why do people follow us? All right, I see a lot of great stuff about vision, trust, belief. These are all great and really important things. So what you're looking at here, this is a picture of me almost 10 years ago in October of 2005. In this picture, I am pinning on the new rank of major, and I am taking the oath of office again. I am raising my right hand and swearing to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The other gentleman you see here is my squadron commander giving me the oath. Now, the reason I'm squinting is because I'm looking directly into the sun at sunset on October 31st, 2005, because we don't make the commander look into the sun. One of the really interesting things about getting promoted in the military, at least it's interesting to me, I hope it's interesting to you. When you get promoted, you get a sheet of paper called your promotion order. On that promotion order, it says, the President of the United States of America, having special trust and confidence in Jason R. LeDuc, blah, 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 a lot of stuff, promote you to the grade of major because of your ability to serve in a higher capacity. People follow us because they have special trust and confidence in us. Special trust and confidence in us because they see that we can serve in that higher capacity. We're not just someone else out there. They believe in us. Who believes their team has special trust and confidence in them? Okay, a couple of folks. The rest not so much. Let's talk about how we can get that special trust and confidence. We talked about why we need leaders. We talked about why people follow us. What do those people who follow us want? I don't have a QR code for this one. Just shout them out. What do people want?
Respect. Do what you say you're going to do.
Okay. Do what you say you're going to do.
Respect.
Respect. Good one.
Security.
Security. Good one. What people want, especially in the workplace, especially on a work team, boils down to three things. The first is for their work to have meaning. Who's working on something that brings meaning to their life? Right? All of our startup founders, people want to know when they show up every day that what they're doing is important. It's going to make a difference in the world. If we don't provide that to them as leaders, we're probably not going to keep them around very long, or we're not going to keep them engaged very long. The second thing, I heard someone say this earlier, the second thing that people want from their employers, especially from their bosses, is to trust their boss and to be trusted by their boss. Who's ever worked in a team where people didn't trust each other? How did that go? Not great, right? Right? How did you guys solve that problem? Or did you?
Got rid of the people we couldn't trust.
Okay, that's a good one. So, if we want to be leaders that inspire special trust and confidence, we have to be the kind of leaders that people trust. We have to foster trust in our team. Our team has to be able to trust us, and we need to be able to trust them. Who's ever had a leader that didn't trust them? That's almost as bad as working with people you don't trust, right? Is you don't feel your leader trusts you, your leader doesn't give you any autonomy, your leader doesn't give you any authority to go do the things you do, they're always checking up on you, they're always micromanaging you. We don't want to be the kind of leaders that do that. We want to be the kind of leaders that trust the people on our team. And finally, people want to be heard and have a role in the decision-making process. Now that's hard sometimes, right? Sometimes we've got a team that's new at what they're doing. They don't understand the big picture yet. They really don't even understand how to do their jobs yet. So our job as leaders is to build that trust with them and get them to the point. We made it through most of the QR codes anyway. So, but what people want is to be heard and feel part of the decision-making process. Our job as leaders is to build that trust with them and among them and get to the point where they can contribute that. So, what is next here? Okay. These are our responsibilities as leaders. Now, what you would be looking at is a big banner that says, strategic thinking is where we find meaning in what we do. Finding meaning for ourselves and helping our team find meaning in what they do, that's where strategic thinking comes in. That's where we need to really understand the purpose of what we're doing, what the impact is that's going to make in the world why we're doing what we're doing, and we need to communicate that to the people on our team. We need to make sure they understand it. We need to make sure they can say it as well as we can say it. Does that make sense? If we can't state the strategic purpose of what we're doing, why it does some good in the world, how can we expect our team to do it? What's really weird about this is out in the corporate world, only 5% of employees understand what their company's big picture mission is, right? Not just to sell, not just the product, not that. What is it the problem they're trying to solve, right? Kurt talked about the problem fit. Only 5% of employees understand what their company's strategy is, what the problem they're solving in the world is. Okay, we want to talk about building trust. We use 2 tools to build trust. We talked about communication, right? We communicate the strategic purpose of what we're doing, the good we do in the world, right? The other tool we use as leaders to build that trust in our team is delegation. Who's good at delegation? Couple of hands. Who struggles with delegation? Yeah. Why do you struggle with delegation in the back?
Control, perfectionism.
Right, it's hard. Sometimes, actually quite often, we say to ourselves, it's just easier if I do it because I know how I want it to be done, I know how I want it to turn out. This is what keeps us in the weeds. Not being willing to give up that control of how the outcome is going to turn out. So, we need to learn how to delegate. We talked about that. It's not up there. You would have gotten to do a QR code where you said what the things were to delegate, why we have trouble delegating. Okay, so we talked about why we need to delegate, because we want to build trust with our team, we want to communicate that strategic vision, and we want to delegate to help build that trust in our team and their trust in us. So how do we delegate effectively? More responsibility, right? Right, so what we do is we take increasing amounts of responsibility, but we also have to take increasing amounts of authority to go along with that. What happens when someone has responsibility and no authority? They fail. They're ineffective, right? That's where we end up micromanaging people, because we said, I've given you a responsibility, but I'm not going to give you any authority to get it done. I need you to come back and check with me for everything you want to do. That's what micromanagement is. What happens when we have lots of authority and no responsibility?
Same thing you just said, but from them.
Right, it's the opposite, right? Is when someone has lots of authority to go do whatever they want to do, to tell people to do whatever they want to do, and no responsibility, no checks and balances in, it leads to abuse, it leads to corruption, right? So we want to stay off of those 2 extremes, and we want to, even with our brand newest employee, start giving them increasing amounts of responsibility and authority commensurate with that responsibility. We do that by setting clear expectations. And setting expectations is just like setting goals. So, what kind of systems do you guys use to set goals?
Project management.
I'm sorry, say again?
Project management system.
Couldn't hear you.
Project management, like we use Monday.com to task.
Okay, that's the tool you use, Monday.com.
Yes, sir.
Any others?
I always tell them, for example, failure is part of the profession.
Say it louder.
I always tell younger engineers that failure or bugs are part of the profession, so you're allowed to fail. We're here to help you. So, but you can also use other.
Yeah, there's a bunch of systems out there. A lot of them come with complex acronyms. I'm going to make your lives really easy. I got this from when we used to do flight testing here in the Air Force in Las Vegas. There are 3 things you want whenever you're setting a goal or you're setting an expectation for someone else. You want to make it clear. What do I mean by clear? When you look them in the eye and you say, repeat it back to me, you can see in their eyes that they get it. Has anyone ever had that kind of experience with someone? Look me in the eye and tell me. And you look in their eyes and they tell you and you go, you got it, all right? And then sometimes you look them in the eyes, you go, you haven't got it. Explain it to me again, right? You want to make it measurable, right? That's one of the key things of all goal setting systems, right? You want to make it measurable. And you don't want to make it measurable because we like tracking stuff, right? Who does a lot of tracking of their goals? I would expect almost everybody in here, right, as entrepreneurs and small business owners and that kind of thing. We don't measure things because we like to track things. We measure things so we know when we're done and we can move on to the next goal. That's what measurable means. Not that you can track it, that there's an end state, there's a success point that you can achieve, and then you can build a path to get there. And then the third thing is achievable. Right? And when I say achievable, I don't mean realistic. Who's been told to make their goals realistic? Yeah, a couple of hands. I don't want you to have realistic goals. I want you to have really big, lofty goals that are going to be hard to achieve. I want you to challenge yourselves. What I mean by achievable is this is inside the bounds of the laws of physics. That's your barrier, okay? I want to walk on the moon. Very difficult goal, right? Ultimately achievable. I want to walk on the surface of the sun. Not achievable inside the bounds of physics for a lot of reasons, right? Not just because it's hot, not just because it's far away, not just because of no surface, right? Okay, so that's what we're doing. Clear, measurable, achievable. Forget all the other goal-setting systems. Hopefully I've changed your life tonight. When you delegate, don't just send people off alone and unafraid to go get it done. One of the things I learned, I showed you the picture back in Colorado Springs of the hangar. One of the things I learned there from my commander, that I was the second in command to, was he had this idea of what we called vector checks. Here's the problem I'm asking you to solve. Go take a couple days and think about how you're going to solve that, and then come back and let's talk about your plan and your approach to solving it, and then we'll give you some feedback. After you do that, after we have that conversation, go off and do some stuff, come back in a week and tell me how it's going, right? We don't want to leave people alone and unafraid to go off and do these goals. Our job as a leader is to make sure they are equipped to do this, both with the resources they need and the mentoring and guidance that we're giving them as leaders. If we send someone off that we are building up their leadership ability, that we're building our trust in, right? Because some folks, you can give them a problem and go solve it, and you know they're going to be fine, right? Everybody knows someone like that, right? But when we're trying to develop these future leaders, we need to make sure we have these vector checks. Let them come back and ask their questions. Let them come back and tell us what they're having a problem with it. Don't give them the answer. Help them talk through how they can get to the answer. We never want to let people feel like they're alone. Yeah, we're really having trouble today. All right, and then the way we talked about people want to feel like they're part of the decision-making process, they want to feel like they're heard. That's where we start developing people into future leaders. We don't let them make all the decisions today, but we start guiding them, we start mentoring them, we start delegating to them, we start giving them increasing amounts of responsibility, we start giving them increasing amounts of authority. We start developing them into leaders, we start giving them more choices, we start giving them more autonomy. We start giving them more say about what's going on, and we do that just like we do the delegation. We build it up slowly. We put them in a box, and we slowly expand the box out. That's how we let people feel like they're part of the decision-making process, because we're developing them into future leaders, and now they feel like we are investing in their future. We are showing them they have a future in our organization. Does that make sense? All right. All right, that is the getting out of the weeds. And I think we are just about have time for a couple questions. So, any questions? I know this is a lot of like how to think about things and not a lot of how to go do things. So, go ahead.
Back to the responsibility, authority, that thing. I was Okay, you see in sales teams, they do this a lot, right? They keep on, upping the requirements to the point that people get unmotivated because the expectation's so high. So is there some key points that you can think of how to balance that out of when you're pushing your team too hard versus not hard enough? Is there a balance that you could feel that, besides maybe all I can think of is like feedback or something like that?
Yeah, I think the question is less about are we pushing them too hard, because again, we want people to have big lofty goals, right? I think the question is less about are we pushing them too hard, and are we giving them the support they need to go achieve that goal? Right, sales is a little bit different animal, right? A lot of times we throw people into sales and we say, go sell, and then we just go point at, hey, look at the guy who's selling really good, or look at the girl who's selling really good. Do what they do, right? But that doesn't work for everybody. And so sometimes your sales team, if you want them to reach that next level of sales, they might need some more training. You might need to bring that Jeb Blunt, that sales consultant in, to come in and sit down with your team and say, okay, what are you doing, right? A lot of times it's how many calls are you making, right? And if your sales team isn't making that many calls, they can't make that many sales, right? So that might be the hard conversation you have with them is, all right, well, I see your call logs. You made 10 calls today to achieve the goal we're looking for. You probably need to be making more like 100 calls a day, right? So instead of letting them figure that out on their own, give them some guidance, give them some mentoring.
Well, let me give a tweak to that, because I think sales, because that was easy. But what I'm running into, say things are above my own pay scale, right? So if I'm hiring people that are more expert than I am, right? And I'm not even sure what the benchmarks should be, sometimes. So I'm trying to maybe bring people in so I can kind of get a feel of, I'm talking about my tech people.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're killing me. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what maybe it's just that hard versus I can't really tell if they're lying to me or not, if it's really supposed to be that hard of what I'm asking them to do.
So the question is, you rely on them to develop the benchmarks.
Well, I'm creating the benchmarks, but maybe I'm creating too high of one because they're not achieving them. So I can't quite figure out if I'm pushing them too hard, and because they're all stressed at this point. We're all stressed because I'm not at the point I need to be at, and so we're all just kind of trying our best.
How did you derive your benchmarks?
I'm a web scooter, right? And I kind of can look at the code, and I know it's a very complicated site, so I try to be very understanding, but it's like a slippery slope. It's like we're not done with this yet, so I'm at this point, I'm watching as they're working, or as he's working, and say, we're going to do this together, because I'm not, and I don't want to say he's lying, but it's like, I don't know why this is taking so long, so I'm trying to learn a little bit with him so I can understand what he's doing, but I don't see his side of the screen.
So what's driving this? These are schedule benchmarks you're talking about.
Yeah.
What's driving the schedule?
My budget.
Okay.
Yes. Probably more than anything else. It's like we needed to be here because my budget is just out of budget because it's taking longer and longer and longer.
Right. So that goes back to when we were talking about strategic thinking, right? There's a strategic big picture.
Right.
You've got a budget for the tech development, the development of your tech stack, right? And when you're out of that budget, that job's going to be gone for your tech guy, right?
No, it just came out of another pot because it's affecting the whole company. We have to have that done.
But at some point, you run out of money, right?
Right. And then it gets real ugly. Yeah.
Right. So I think from a strategic perspective is what happens if you don't meet this on budget and on time, and is there a fallback position of good enough where you can start bringing in more revenue with the platform?
If we get a few more, since I own a bar club over here, I've heard, there's a lot of balance. There's a whole, it's a big network. So there is one section of it I want to pull out. I was going to do later. Now I'm like, I need to get this section out. It's basically a gift card exchange. So I'm trying to get the physical gift card portion of it, but it's all about user experience, and it has to be clean. I can't just have it a mess. So even though I've got all this platform done, it's just like,
Is that the one piece he's working on?
yeah, I just like, you're not doing anything else but that, and we're doing it together.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer, is if this is the most important thing in the strategic plan right now, we do this. We don't do anything else till it's done, and we get this up and launched with a great user experience
Right.
so that we are bringing revenue in on that, because I assume you're taking a percentage of something.
Right, it's all, it's basically I wanted to start with a group of 20 is how the platform's set up. So once I have that set, I can get revenue 1 to 20, I figured it'll be 10,000 a month on 20 customers.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I think having a strategic roadmap of which features need to come in,
Right,
and if your tech team is one guy,
yeah, that's the
one thing at a time is probably reasonable.
right, okay.
So if your tech team is one guy and he's capable of doing more than one thing at once, which it doesn't sound like right now, or maybe this thing is so complex it's the only thing he can work on, right?
And I can't bail, I mean, I'm kind of looking at bringing other people in to see it, and it's like I'll spend 10 times as much for them to figure out what's going on. So I'm like, okay, I just got to stick with.
Yeah, I think it's gas pedal down on that one feature, and then as he's working on that, you're reworking the strategic plan in your head of what comes next.
Okay, well, thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead.
So when it comes to delegating, because delegating is probably definitely one of the hardest things for all of us to do sometimes. So when you have a group of people, how do you feel about probably providing behavioral assessments so that when you're looking at your team, you have a better view of who you should be delegating a specific task to?
You're talking about behavioral assessments like Myers-Briggs, DISC, et cetera, et cetera. I think those are great tools. I think those are better left for self-assessment and self-reflection of understanding ourselves. Because here's the thing. You can have everyone take an assessment, but there's a then what that comes after that assessment, right? So now that I know this about all of these people on my team, how do I as the leader address them about that, right?
Right, because
So-
I've seen some results of the mayors where like I have run some of this with some of my teams, and sometimes somebody seems to be a slacker, and delegating to that person might be like, we don't know if they're gonna finish on time. Nevertheless, this individual performs extremely well under pressure because it's not that they're slacker, they're critical thinkers. So it's gonna take them a little longer period of time to explain what the process is. So thanks to the mayor survey, we figured out who that specific really high-risk task is gonna go to, right? So that's my experience, so that's why I was asking, what's your experience with it?
Yeah, if you're going to use an assessment to do that, just make sure that the reality actually backs up what the assessment tells you, because not everyone's honest when they fill out those assessments.
Yeah.
And people change over time, and sometimes people are in a different headspace when they fill out the assessment than when they're working. So that's great if you're, whether you learn that about folks through learning about them as you get to know them, or you do that through an assessment and then you corroborate that with what you know about them, that's great. If you've got someone who's a high performance player in a high pressure situation, that's great. Use them for that, but you got to make sure they're gainfully employed with all high pressure situations all the time. What I would probably work on with that person is, I know you're great in a high pressure situation because you're a quick thinker. What I need to start working with you as a mentor is start developing you as a leader, start getting you to think about the strategic big picture, start getting you to see value in slowing down our thinking and slowing down our action. Make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? All right, well, thank you for having me tonight. It's been great. Thank you, Tech A!
Thank you, Jason.